Freedom Riders cross into Mississippi. The game founded in a peach basket turns sour as a lemon. The Prince and Princess of Monaco grace White House. All these stories and more brought to you by the people who made News in the World Today. The Mutual Broadcasting System presents radio's #1 award-winning program, The World Today. Brought to you by new Instant Chase and Sanborn Coffee, the delicious new instant with pure coffee nectar, and by other participating sponsors. This is John Scott in New York. A cooling-off period is needed in the Deep South, according to Attorney General Robert Francis Kennedy. His statement followed an announcement from the Freedom Riding headquarters that more bus-borne crusaders of the type that met violence in Montgomery, Alabama, would start moving almost daily through that region. It would be wise, cautioned the Attorney General, for those traveling through these states to delay their trips until the present state of confusion and danger is past and an atmosphere of reason and normalcy has been restored. Robert Kennedy warned of the increasing possibility that innocent persons may be injured. There are curiosity seekers, publicity seekers, and others who are seeking to serve their own causes, as well as many persons who are traveling because they must use the interstate carriers to reach their destination. In an earlier statement, the Attorney General had linked his appeal for restraint to the upcoming international trip of President Kennedy. President Kennedy, who must soon meet de Gaulle of France, Khrushchev of Soviet Russia, Prime Minister Macmillan and Queen Elizabeth II of Britain, and he must meet them on an unembarrassed footing. Meanwhile, in Jackson, Mississippi, 12 of the Freedom Riders came to town today and got off their bus. For the rest of the story, here is John Jay of Mutual Station WJQS, Jackson, Mississippi.
The first of what apparently will be an all-out effort to test the segregation barriers of Mississippi took place this afternoon. A Trailways bus with 12 self-styled Freedom Riders arrived in this capital city of Mississippi, hardcore of segregation. Promptly upon arrival at the bus station, all 12 riders were hustled off to jail, charged with inciting a riot, refusal to obey an officer, and disorderly conduct. The charges came moments after they stepped from their bus. 8 Negroes were arrested for entering a white men's room after reading a sign the colored area was closed. The other arrested in front of the bus station. An estimated crowd of 200 were lined up behind a cordon of police for 4 blocks. Most were people who worked in the immediate area. There were no incidents in direct contrast to the bloody rioting which occurred when the group pulled into Montgomery last week. The Freedom Riders were accompanied on the bus by 7 National Guardsmen with fixed bayonets and 17 newsmen. The Guardsmen were commanded by a full colonel. With their initial efforts finalized and arrest, the Freedom Riders have made it clear that they intend to continue their bus travel through Mississippi. A second busload is scheduled to arrive later tonight in Jackson. The 12 are scheduled for trial tomorrow. This is John Jay, WJQS News. Now back to John Scott on The World Today in New York.
This evening, another group of freedom riding youngsters got off a bus in Jackson, Mississippi, and all were promptly put in jail. Late this afternoon, Robert Kennedy's Justice Department accused 4 Alabama policemen of deliberately withholding protection from the Freedom Riders who'd faced an angry mob last Saturday in Montgomery's bus station.
You feel better about smoking with the taste of Kent with the micronite filter. Refines away a harsh flavor, refines away a hot taste. It makes the taste of a cigarette mild as a balmy day in the month of May. Kent is the best for the flavor you like. Kent is the best for the flavor you like. Refines away a harsh flavor, refines away a hot taste. It makes the taste of a cigarette mild as a balmy day in the month of May. Kent is the best. Kent with the micronite filter. Kent is the best. Kent with the micronite filter. Kent is the best. You feel better about smoking with the taste of Kent. Kent with the micronite filter. Refines away a harsh flavor. Refines away a hot taste.
sport of basketball. The Executive Secretary of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People today gave a cold shoulder to Attorney General Kennedy's plea for a cooling-off period in the Deep South, while some 34 determined freedom-riding youngsters put in a day in Jackson, Mississippi's jail. Roy Wilkins of the NAACP said flatly, there can be no cooling off in the effort to obtain one's citizenship rights. In Washington, Attorney General Kennedy said that all but 100 federal marshals have been withdrawn from Montgomery, Alabama, but minutes later, 7 other Mississippi-bound freedom riders were arrested in that city, including white religious leaders such as the Reverend William S. Coffin, chaplain of Yale University, the Reverend Gaylord Boyce, assistant professor at the Yale Divinity School, and Dr. David Swift, professor of religion at Wesleyan University. Another man to take a poke at Attorney General Kennedy's cooling-off period request was Governor Ross Barnett of Mississippi, who said Kennedy wasn't specific enough and should have stated whether he meant the Freedom Riders or the public should do the cooling off. Meanwhile, the NAACP plans to stage a mass rally tomorrow night in Jackson, Mississippi. And in New York, Congress of Racial Equality Director James Farmer said, throughout the nation we can end segregation in bus, train, and airline terminals if we are willing to make the sacrifices involved. Meanwhile, for the story from Montgomery, Alabama, where the recent racial flare-ups all began last Saturday, here is Chuck Elliott of mutual station WMGY, Montgomery.
The fear of more racial violence had lessened considerably in Montgomery, Alabama today. The crowds in downtown Montgomery were more carefree, with many smiles replacing the worried looks of the past few days. Store owners very happily reported sales back to normal. Even the threat of more freedom riders didn't matter. Local officials were handling the situation well. Violence seemed out of the picture. A few anonymous phone calls threatening bombings have been received, but all proved to be false alarms. This morning, Maxim Butler, sheriff of Montgomery County, entered the segregated Greyhound bus station lunchroom, counted the Negroes eating at the white counter. All 11 of you are under arrest for breach of the peace, were the sheriff's first and only words. The 11 Negroes were very quietly then escorted to the paddy wagon and taken to the county jail. In fact, the racial scene is so quiet that all but 100 federal marshals are leaving Alabama. It's been cloudy and raining all day in Montgomery, but the pall of gloom caused by the racial violence is lifting, and faces are shining, even if the sun is not. This is Chuck Elliott at WMGY in Montgomery, Alabama. Now back to John Scott and the World Today in New York.